Okay, we're going to go ahead and talk about Unit 3, Day 4, solving quadratics using square roots. So, before we talk about this stuff, we need to recall inverse operations. So, when I give you something like 2x plus 3... No, I don't think 2x plus 3 will work. Let's do x plus 3 equals 6. Okay, that's just a shorter example. So I'm trying to get x by itself, but there's something in the way, which is this positive 3. So this is an addition sign, and I need to get this plus 3 out of here. And how do I do that? Well, I need to take what we call the inverse operation, and the inverse operation of addition would be subtraction. So I need to go ahead and subtract both sides by 3, and therefore I should get x is equal to 3. Okay? So the opposite of addition, we say that is just subtraction. And then the opposite of subtraction is addition. Okay? And then for multiplication and division, if I have something like, I don't know, 2x is equal to 6, what do I need to do? This 2x is the same thing as 2 times x. So the opposite of multiplication is just simply division. So I need to divide both sides by 2, and this is my answer. So opposite of multiplication is division, and then opposite of division is just multiplication. So what happens if we have the square root of x squared? What happens if we have a perfect squared and it's under the square root sign? So remember, if you have a variable squared or a number squared and it's under the square root, they cancel out. So taking a look at this, the square root of x squared is just simply x, because we have this sign and then this value, this 2, they cancel each other out. So they go away and we're just left with this x over here. Okay? Now what I'm going to go ahead and do is we're going to go think of some possible x values for each scenario below. X squared is equal to 9. Think of some values. Something squared is going to give me 9. Well, of course, if we say x is equal to 3 and I plug in 3 into my expression, then I'm going to have 3 squared, which is the same thing as 3 times 3, which is 9. Okay? And remember, put those parentheses because it makes a big difference, because I've been telling you since the beginning to put these parentheses here. Now it's going to be a huge factor. Now you're going to realize that x equals 3 is not only the answer, because x equals negative 3 is also a value. If I square it, put those parentheses in, square it, you're going to get 9. So negative 3 with the parentheses squared is equal to negative 3 times a negative 3, which is 9, because a negative times a negative is a positive. Okay? So therefore, our answer is x is equal to 3, and also x is equal to negative 3. Okay, so let's go ahead and do x squared is equal to 25. Well, we take the square root on both sides. Well, actually, I shouldn't go into that, but, take the square root is something that you'll be doing after we do all this. But thinking some values, well, something squared is going to give me 25. Well, it's just going to be plus and minus 5, right? X is equal to the positive and negative 5. And if you don't know what this notation is, it's just the same thing as saying x is equal to positive 5 and x is equal to negative 5. So it's basically the same thing, but I'm just making it shorter for me and using less lead or ink or whatever. This is sufficient. Okay? And then over here, it's just going to be x is equal to positive or negative 6. And then lastly, x is equal to positive or negative 10. Same thing, x is equal to positive 10, x is equal to negative 10. Two answers, but I wrote it all in one, which is totally fine. Okay, so let's just write it over here if you're still stuck. This is just saying plus or minus something, okay? Here we go. Number 1 to 8 is going to be quick. Steps for solving quadratics using the square roots. If the variable in an equation is squared, get it by itself. Take the square root on both sides. Your answer should be in the form plus or minus with a few exceptions. So taking a look at number 1, I have x squared is equal to 9, and my goal here is to get rid of this square. And how do I get rid of that? Well, we need to take what? The square root on both sides, right? Just what we said over here. What happens if we take the square root of x squared? It's just going to be x, right? So this one, I'm taking the square root on the left side, and what we have to do on one side, we also have to do on the other side. Just like when we're trying to solve basic equations, right? We have two, let's not go with that again. X plus 6 is equal to 12. I'm subtracting 6. Whatever I do on one side, I have to do on the other side. And that's my answer. So you take the square root on both sides. X, the square root of x squared is just simply x. And then the square root of 9 is not just 3, it's plus or minus 3. And that is my answer. Do not forget the plus or minus, because there are two answers, not just one. Do not make that mistake, okay? Go ahead and do number 2. I need to take the square root on both sides. And then the square root of x squared is just going to be x. And then the square root of 25 is plus or minus 5. And that is my answer. Again, you should have the same thing over here, right? This is, this is a bar to, these are the same and these are the same, and you should get the idea. Okay, 3. This is a little weird because our right side is 0. So let's see what happens. Take the square root on both sides, and then I'm left with a is equal to plus or minus 0. I've never heard of a negative 0 or a positive 0. 0 is just pretty much neutral. So a is equal to 0. Okay, a is equal to 0. We know that from the number line. And over here, whoa. This one is a little weird. We are going to take the square root on both sides. And I'm left with x is equal to, whoa, the square root of negative 81. Well, I'm not going to say that there is an answer for this. We're still in Algebra 1. So if you have a number that's a negative under the square root, we're just going to say no real solution to this one, because we have a negative under the square root, and I can't do anything about that. So there's no real solution for that. I'm going to go ahead and move on. And this stuff is, you'll learn more about this when you get into Algebra 2, but here in Algebra 1, we're not going to go into detail about this stuff here. Okay, here we go, number 5. Okay, what do we notice? Well, we have a squared minus 16 is equal to 0. Okay, so when we're solving equations by using square roots, you have to make sure that the variable that's being squared is by itself. Is this a squared by itself? No, because this negative 16 or this minus 16 is in the way. So I have to do what? I have to use our inverse operations. I see a minus 16. The opposite of minus is simply just addition. So I need to add both sides by 16, just like I've done before. Something that we've already practiced at the beginning of the semester, last semester. And then I'm going to be left with what? A squared is equal to 16. And then, it's just the same thing like we've done before, right? We need to take the square root on both sides. And then we're going to be left with what? We're going to be left with a is equal to plus or minus 4, and this is my answer. Number 6, again, this contains the variable being squared, and a lot of you need to remember we can't do anything unless this goes away. A lot of you are just going to go ahead and just divide both sides by, or I don't know, maybe you divide by 2 first and then add by an 88. No. You need to add by 98 first, and then you're left with 2. Let's go and use that original. 2x squared is equal to 98. Okay, now don't take the square root. You still need to get that x squared by itself. This is the same thing as saying 2 times x squared. So I need to get rid of this 2. So I got to divide both sides by 2. And I'm left with, I'm just going to move it over here. X squared is equal to 48. And then I need to take the square root on both sides. So I'm left with x on the left side, which is equal to, okay, I don't know what the square root of 45 is. So we need to go back and we need to go and simplify this. So I'm left with, okay, 48. Two numbers that multiply together to give me 48. Well, that's just going to be 24 and 2. And then this is going to be, what, 12 into... And I'm just breaking this up. Remember, I'm trying to break this up until I'm left with prime numbers, right? 6 and 2, 3 and 2. And then, okay, what do I have? I have a pair of 2's over here. So I take 1, 2 out of the pair and eliminate the other. So I'm just going to write a 2 over here. I got another pair of 2. So I take 1, 2 out. Put it over here and eliminate the other one. And then whatever's inside, lonely and depressed, I'm going to put 3 under the square root. Okay? So then my answer is going to be 4 times the square root of 3. But we have to consider that -4 times the square root of 3 quantity squared is going to give you the square root of 48. So don't forget to put that plus or minus in your answer. Do not forget to put the plus or minus in your answer. Okay. All right, here we go. I'm going to go ahead and add both sides by 5. And I'm left with -3x squared is equal to 0. Divide both sides by -3. And you're left with x squared is equal to 0. And you know for sure if I take the square root, x is still going to give me 0, and that's my answer. Number 8, subtract both sides by 10. So you're left with 4y squared is equal to 1. And then you're left with 4y squared. So it's just the same thing as 4 times y squared. I got to divide both sides by 4. So I'm left with what? Y squared is equal to 1/4. And then you take the square root of everything. So we are left with y is equal to, okay, well, the square root of 1/4. Remember, the square root of 1/4 is the same thing as the square root of 1 over the square root of 4. The square root of 1 is just 1, and the square root of 4 is just 2. So the answer is y is equal to plus or minus 1/2. Okay? And then, we can use this equation to, solve this equation, use a calculator, round to the nearest 10th. We can use our calculators to round to the nearest 10th. So I'm going to subtract both sides by 6, and I have x squared is equal to, well, 13 minus 6. That's just going to be, what, 7? Take the square root on both sides. And then I'm going to go ahead and use my calculator. And then I type in second x squared. You should find the square root button. And then to the nearest tenths, it's literally the number after the decimal. So I got to round it to the nearest tenths. I look at the 4. Is that less than 5 or greater than 5? It's less than 5. I don't change it. So my answer is what? X is equal to 2.6. And there you go. Oh, can't be x equals 2.6 because it's plus or minus 2.6. There you go. All right. Examples involving a quantity being squared. Remember when I keep saying quantity, I'm talking about these parentheses, right? Parentheses squared. What we got to do is we want to, if we have something like this whole thing, this is actually one number after we subtract, right? So this, think about this as one number, x minus 2 quantity squared. So this whole thing here is being squared. I can actually get rid of this square by taking the square root on both sides. Okay, and if you have a square root and some expression being squared, and it has to be all involving something like this, you can go ahead and cancel this and this out. So you're left with x minus 2, which is equal to the square root of 9. The square root of 9 is just plus or minus 9. Okay, so this is a little weird. How would I solve for x? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and add both sides by 2. And what happens here is that, yes, you're going to be left with x on the left side, and then this 2 actually goes right in front of the plus or minus sign. So x is equal to 2 plus or minus 9. And you're not done because this is saying 2 plus or minus, so you need to do 2 plus 9 and 2 minus 9. Okay, so really, let's just draw an arrow and just say, okay, x is equal to 2 plus 9, and then x is equal to 2 minus 9. 2 plus 9 is 11. 2 minus 9 is just negative 7. And then, your answers are x is equal to 11 and x is equal to negative 7. Okay, here we go. Let's do number 2 together. Take the square root on both sides, and you're left with 2x minus 1 is equal to plus or minus 9. I'm going to go ahead and add 1 on both sides, so I'm left with what? 2x is equal to 1 plus or minus 9. And then divide both sides by 2. And you're left with x is equal to, ooh, this is going to be so gross, 1 plus or minus 9 over 2. Okay, so all I got to do is this. All right, x is equal to 1 plus 9 over 2, and then x is equal to 1 minus 9 over 2. So weird, but, I'm not changing anything. I'm just rewriting this. So this, this plus or minus, all I did was I just rewrote it. So I have 1 plus or minus 9, which is what I have here, and then I divide that by 2, which is what I have here, and then 1 minus 9 I have right here, divide that by 2. I'm not changing anything. I'm not changing much. I'm writing the same thing, one with the plus and one with the minus. Basically, that's it. And then all you got to do is just, do the math. Just add the numerator and keep the denominator first for a bit. So 1 plus 9 is 10, and divide that by 2, which is what I have here. 10 divided by 2 is just 5. And then 1 minus 9 is going to be negative 8. Divide that by 2, and then that's going to be what? Negative 4. And it wasn't that scary. All you have to do is just, if you know how to add and subtract, if you know how to add in the numerator and do stuff after using whatever you need from the denominator, then you're good to go. Okay? That's all we're trying to do, is just keep it as is. Okay, number 3. We have a problem. I can't take the square root on both sides yet because there's something in the way. I have this 9. This is saying 9 times the quantity x plus 1 quantity squared. Or 9 times x plus 1 quantity squared. And you need to get this by itself. So I got to divide both sides by 9. And you're left with x plus 1 quantity squared is equal to 16 over 9. Now I can take the square root on both sides. And you're left with 4 over 3, plus or minus 4 over 3 actually. Subtract both sides by 1. So you're left with x is equal to negative 1 plus 4 over 3. And I'm good with this because I don't want to do I don't want decimals. I think this is such a sufficient answer, and I'm happy with that. So there you go. That's my answer.